So I think sometimes it's the absence of something that tells us everything. I'm going to start with this graph here. This, for any of us in education, is the achievement gap. Now, I don't know if you can see it, but this one is graduation rates. And what you have in the achievement gap in this case is you see it gets stratified with white kids at the top with their graduation rates, and you work your way down, Latino kids, black kids at the bottom. And you can see this in assessments, you can see this in graduation rates, you can see this in just about anything you look at in education. It doesn't go away, it's always there. And I want to dismiss something really quickly. Like, you can't explain this thing just by looking at racial bias and testing alone. The truth is, even as you get better and better at making assessments that are less biased, or you think about things that aren't even being assessed by kids taking tests, that gap persists, still there. So it's measuring something, right? It's measuring outcomes, and routinely, white kids are at the top, black kids are at the bottom. And that's spawned, blossomed whole industries of education reforms in the last 50, 100 years, all about how do you get the kids in these bottom lines to do more and better so that they can get into this top line. In fact, there's an incredible stat that John King, the former Secretary of Education, stated about 10 years ago where he was talking about this, and he said 97% of our education philanthropy dollars, billions of dollars in this country, go towards helping kids in those bottom lines do more, do better, so they can get out of that line and get into the top lines. And that's really admirable work, right? I don't want to diminish the impact of that, but it's starfish work. We're helping throw one more buckets of starfish back into the water at a time. We've seen teacher programs, principal programs, curriculums, different school models. We've even seen things that I would argue are pretty problematic, like let's teach these kids in the bottom line more grit, more character. Well, what you see is also that this slope, that when that stuff works, that slope is what's happening, right? The reforms are what are driving the outcomes to go up. And sometimes they don't, because people are doing things that they shouldn't be, and they go down. But in Chicago, we have this incredible story, where we used to have 50% graduation rates for 50 years, and now we have 80%. And it's real. But what never goes away is that gap. Whether we go up, whether we go down, it never goes away. And to me, that's the tide washing 10,000 starfish up on the shore every single day. And when I think about that ratio of 97% of our effort is focused on getting the starfish back in the water one at a time, two at a time, and we never talk about the tide, like, we're measuring achievement. But the reason we don't understand this thing is because we're not talking about where it comes from or how we even get here. And you see, for me, I spent my life trying to figure out what this thing is, this achievement gap, because this achievement gap is my life. My parents were teachers, civil rights activists, married and met in the 60s. My dad is where Anello comes from, Sicilian, Italian, my mom's black. And when they married, my Anello side of the family, who I don't know, just owned my father. And so there was nothing gluing them to where they were, teaching in inner city schools in New Jersey. They were in Newark, and my dad talks about the race riots being right down the street. And so on a whim, on a random drive through this tiny town that is a third the size of Chicago but only has 2,000 people in it, less today, it's just trees. They bought a piece of property on a road, a dirt road called Hogback Road, and then they drove up every weekend for 5 years straight and built the house that they raised me and my brothers in. I mean, 50 miles away across the street, it was country. I'm country. I can't hide it. And, there was no question, like, they raised three of us, I'm the one in the middle if you can find me. But my older brother, Shane, he's a year older than me, in school, a year and a half in age. We did everything together, we were kind of like Irish twins. Whether that was school, band, whatever it was. And then my younger brother, Gabi, who's 4 years younger than me. And when you think about where we were, we're in this all-white, really poor rural mill town with a lot of trailers. We were black kids, we were black family. Not just in my town, but every town near us. That's my kindergarten photo. And it was hostile. It was aggressive. Like, I didn't understand implicit racism because it was explicit racism. It was in my face. It was the N-word, and for my parents, it meant it was a fight. You have to fight for your respect and dignity. And so that was just the world we lived in. And what I remember very vividly was, even then, we didn't know what that achievement gap was by name. But we knew as black boys that our odds compared to these white boys and white girls around us were not as good when it came to life, education outcomes, or anything. Like, that was, we felt that, and they told us that, with no uncertainty, right? Well, my parents, they're teachers, right? So they're like, hey, education's a great equalizer. We don't care where you go. My mom would be like, you can't stay here. And my brother, he decided he's a motorhead. He wanted to go become a diesel automotive mechanic. He got a shot to go as far away as he could. And he went to a 2-year school in Phoenix to learn how to build automotive diesel engines, that kind of thing. And my turn came a year later. My mom takes me and sits me down at the dining room table, which is a East Orange public middle school table with gum still stuck on the other side. She pulls out a compass. She's an art teacher. She draws a circle on the map. She says, your brother's got the one ticket home in the summer. Pick 5 schools to apply to inside that circle. She hands me a bag full of brochures, and I sort through them. I literally picked 5 brochures upstairs in my room based on the girls on the covers of the brochures. That is how I chose. And when the 3rd pick came back with a financial aid package that absolutely dwarfed anything else, my father was like, you like this place again, right? So I ended up going to, by chance, one of the most rigorous schools in the country. My ACT score, like 8 points to 10 points below whatever the median was at the time. I ended up testing to all remedial classes. I ended up in a place called Williams College, and I got crushed. I got absolutely crushed. And honestly, when I'm there, I'm thinking, I'm watching all these white kids just fly right by me. Everything's easy. And as much as my parents spent all this energy trying to affirm my identity and who I was, teaching me stuff that I wasn't learning at the school, in my head, my own anti-blackness that seeps into you, I'm convinced I have this genetic flaw that means I'm never going to be as competent or as capable or smart as any of these kids around me. And I was ready to throw in the towel, I was ready to give up. And then my father called me from Phoenix. He went to go find my brother. And the challenge there is that my brother is too far away from home. Same demons, same fight. Started drinking. That became a drug problem. And then the criminal justice system got its hands on a black boy and never let go. You see, there's these moments where, and to me, the achievement gap it's not a place where we land. What's driving it is more monstrous than that. And there's these moments where you're snapped out to a vantage point where you see these infinitesimally small deposits it's constantly making, and all of a sudden you just see its full glamour. And that was one of those moments, because I knew right then and there, I knew that we were never going to be in the same line again. That was where our lives totally diverged. And that was where, for me, this obsession was born, to figure out what this thing was, because I needed to end it. And I started in all the obvious places, right? I started right away with, are we genetically different, right? Is there a difference between us when it comes to complexion, all these social constructs that we live with? And maybe you guys don't remember this, but in 2003, I had this liberating moment where the human genome gets mapped, and science comes back, and Bill Clinton announces it, and they're like, guess what? We're 99.9% the same. Exactly what my dad said to me when I was 5. He said, oh, we're just all human. In fact, 2 people that look remarkably similar, like when it comes to complexion, but facial features can be more genetically different than 2 people that look vastly different from each other, because it's such a small percentage of who we are. And that was transformative for me, because suddenly I'm like, okay, well, I don't have this there is no genetic flaw. So what is it? What's driving this achievement gap? And then you go to all the culture arguments, right? And I was a math major by accident because I didn't know how to write a paper. That was how I started. But I know how to do a proof now. So I start unpacking all the arguments, and I will tell you, we can go into those things later when I finally feel like I can have a drink. But none of them hold up. The only thing that they do when you unpack the culture arguments is that they uphold this notion that everybody that's ending up in the lines where they do is coming through a fair system. And when you make that claim, even if it's implicit, which a lot of us are doing organically, just the way we move in the world, we are suggesting that the white students on the top here have earned where they are, and the black students have earned where they are as well, that they deserve to be there. And the truth is none of that holds together. So once you get rid of genetics, not that, and you realize it's not broken families, absent black fathers, it's not some specialized values that come with your religion, Confucius values, whatever, like none of that stuff holds together. So then you start looking at this thing and you start going around the world and you're looking, okay, well, wait a minute, I can find this in everything. I can find this gap whether I'm looking at, I could change the name on this to wealth, to health, I could change it to mortgage rates, I could change it to who gets a loan, who owns a house. I can change it to tree canopy covers, things that people don't have, and it looks exactly the same. And so you start thinking, wait a minute, like this is about the structures, right? We may be landing on a place of achievement, but what's driving it is the structures around it. When it stratifies across something that the human genome tells us is a social construct and racializes it, it's structural racism. That's what's feeding this thing. So for me now, I can't unsee this thing, but I see the achievement gap in every place I move. I see it every time I think about in obvious places like the segregation in the city. I see it whenever I get on the train and I see who's struggling and who isn't. I see it in the history that we aren't taught, the history that we are. I see it in the monuments that we defend. For you, Bonnie. I see it in all these new narratives that are old narratives that are reemerging about hard work, grit, self-determination, who gets second chances. The hardest working person next to my father and my mom that I know was my little brother Shane. In 2020, my brother Shane was working 14-hour days, 7 days a week for 18 cents an hour. And he was in a place he was in a maximum security prison in Beaumont, Texas. He was 9 years into his 11-year sentence, and he had done everything right. He's good behavior. He's done all the classes. He's ready to exit. And COVID hits. And it just starts ravaging the prison. Like it's just coming through. And of course, the prisons aren't announcing any of this. They're not putting it in the news or covering it all up. But he's talking to me and he's like, and this is someone, he went in a strapping 220-pound, like strong guy. He was a big dude. And by then he was a 5X t-shirt with diabetes, heart condition, and blood pressure that clocked in the 200s. And the rehabilitation system that is our criminal justice incarceration system. And he knew that if COVID hit him, he was dead. He was a ticking time bomb, right? So, hard work, grit, determined. He went and found himself a really good defense attorney. He'd done this in the past, gets the right person, and savvy, figures out what he needs to do to get out to make his case, gets a compassionate judge who gives him compassionate release in 2020. July 16, 2020, he gets released from Beaumont Penitentiary, which is remarkable because they only released 1.6% of people who applied in 2020. Most of them over the age of 65. He gets out, and on his way out, what does he get for his second chance? The warden looks him in the face and says, "This is the first and last time anyone gets out of Beaumont like this." And then they gave him 1 bottle of water, and they gave him a mask, 1 mask. They put him on 19 buses over 47 hours across the southern U.S., up the West Coast, back to Seattle, where his 2 boys lived, for the price they could have flown home. And if you look at the map for COVID, July 16, 2020, you will see that that is where it was the most dangerous. That exact route. Now, the good fortune is that he made it. It was an incredible story that he made it. But then the system conspired and sadly took my brother in August 23, which is a different part of the story. I see the achievement gap every time I think about the fact that for 20 years after my brother left home, every holiday we'd set the table and we'd leave the spot to the right of my father blank, absent, nothing there, like there's a force field around it, and never talk about it. And I see it and think about it every time I look at these lines, because my brother, to his dying day, thought that he deserved everything that happened to him and that he belonged in that bottom line. I'd be lying if I said I didn't hate this thing. Every day I get up, it's about this thing. This is not an achievement gap. We are measuring the impact of discrimination. And it is driven by structural racism. And I write a lot about racial reconciliation because the only way I see us closing this thing is if we start to shift our mindset away from 97% of our effort, trying to move the kids out of this bottom line by doing more and do better into the top one, and stop only putting 3% into changing the tide. I'm not saying we stop the starfish work because we need it, but we got to get our ratios right. Racial reconciliation gives us the opportunity to build the collective empathy that we need to stop blaming the people that are in the bottom line and committing to this ideology that what you just saw comes through a fair process, that this world is meritocracy. And so the truth is we don't have to wait for racial reconciliation. Kids First Chicago, the work we do is rooted in the tide. Because I can't do anything else. Like, I just can't turn it off. It's about giving parents the same respect and dignity in this city of Chicago that they would get if they were white parents in an affluent community out on the west, wherever, pick your side. What we do in our work is we're deferential to them. Like, it doesn't matter what I think, it matters what they think, because they are directly impacted, back to Adrian's point earlier. And our job is just to help them understand the system, understand how things move, and then they tell us what they want to do about particular policies and systems, and we help them get it done. That's what we do. And when I think about the achievement gap, it's the first signal of our odds, but it's also telling us what every other gap's going to look like thereafter. So to me, if we want to change all of our work, whether it's health, wealth, education, and we want to close this gap for real, we have to shift our mindset away from the 97-3 ratio. Because if we can't start doing more tide work alongside the starfish work, which my call to action, everybody here, is you all do work. If you're doing starfish work, great. But what are you doing alongside that to get at the tide? Because if we don't do that, then the gap, that's just us.